Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm deeply in love with all things beautiful that make life bloom. I believe that with every step we take, we can make life grow stronger. Some think that's a struggle, but I think that it can be done in all sorts of fun and enjoyable ways. That is why I started to film the Lifekeeper's Diaries. Here is where I share my views of beauty, my ways of giving back to life, and my sparkles of creativity. I think those are exactly the ways of how to fill life with joy and love for ourselves and others. That is the way of a Lifekeeper. This is a church of the Vision of Saint Mary. It got its name after two keepers of the local vineyards saw Saint Mary by the entrance to the old church. It was standing in this place since the 13th century, and Mary warned them about the bad condition that it was in at that time. This was in the night before the day of Saint Mary's Ascension on the 15th of August 1512. After that, the church was renovated and the story of sighting was spread among people from near and far. The path leading to the church became the most important sacred path among pilgrims in Istria. The church is full of beautiful paintings. The miracle of sighting of Saint Mary is depicted in the painting that can still be seen in the main altar. It was painted for this church in the 17th century. Other paintings show images from Saint Mary's life. When you walk from the church to the top of the cliff, the view soon opens onto the big cross of Strunjan. A stone cross has been standing here since the beginning of the 17th century. This place also holds his story of sighting of Saint Mary. The legend tells that a long time ago, a terrible storm raged across the Bay of Strunjan. The ships would probably all sink into the sea, but amidst the storm, some sailors saw the image of Saint Mary above the bay. She stopped the raging weather, and some say that her footprints and the tears that she cried for the sailors can still be seen in rocks scattered across the bay.
So I'm now at the seaside, and as you can see, this is quite different than at my hometown. And what is most amazing is that this is just about an hour and a half from Greene, where I live, and the region is completely different because, well, Slovenia is a very, very tiny country, but we live in this specific place in Europe when different landscapes meet. So if you travel just about half an hour, you might just get completely different view, completely different climate and geographical situation. I came here for a few days because the weather forecast was really good, so I thought I should take a few days to enjoy the seaside, to just change the climate and the surroundings a little bit. And since finally we can now travel around Slovenia after about 4 months of lockdown, I should just take it. And I used to study here at the seaside. Then I just fell in love with this place. This is not really the place where I studied. It's a town a bit further down in that direction. But I got used to seeing sea in this beautiful part of the year. I'm not really a fan of being at the seaside throughout the main season in the summertime because it gets too crowded. I'm really in love with the seaside in autumn and springtime. And it's even more obvious that spring is coming. Well, actually, it's already here at the seaside because it's Mediterranean climate. We are by the Adriatic Sea. And the weather is really mild here, so some trees are actually already blooming, while in my town, well, they probably won't be blooming for at least a month and a half or 2 months. So it just amazes me each time that you get such a difference in climate and in landscape traveling just an hour and a half. And it's like coming to a completely different part of the world. And I'm really in love with that. So I thought, well, since I can come here now, finally, I should make some video footage here as well and show you some of the beauties of this landscape. I'm now walking through the grove of the olive trees, which is very typical for this landscape. So as you can see, this is very much influenced by everything Mediterranean. So the architecture is Mediterranean, so the houses were typically made out of local stone. And it really fits in, it's really wonderful to see those houses here. Whereas if you would put them in my region that is surrounded by high mountains, it would be really quite weird to see that. It just wouldn't fit in. So it's really wonderful to see how people just took what they had and used it in the most appropriate way. So if it's local, it just naturally fits in. And the olive trees, they wouldn't grow in my region because it's way too cold, whereas here they're very typical and we have really wonderful olive oil. And there's also a lot of wine producing because, again, the climate allows that, and it's really high quality wine. So it's really great to see what the local surrounding offers you and how you can incorporate that into your daily life, and how it always turns out the best if you go with what nature offers you in the local surrounding and at the right time. field that has a wonderful overview over the coastal part of Slovenia that borders to Italy. So behind me you can actually see Isola and a part of Koper, especially the port of Koper, which is one of the biggest ports in this part of the Mediterranean. And then further down you can actually see Italy, but well, it is a bit foggy, so the view is not as nice as it could be, because otherwise you could actually see the tops of the high mountains from Italy still covered in snow, and that is absolutely magical. Well, but maybe some other time. But anyway, so these two towns behind me, Koper and Isola, they used to be islands, and if you know the Italian language you can actually tell that Isola was an island even by its name, because Isola in Italian means island. But they are not islands anymore for quite a long time because they were both connected to the land in the past. But anyway, Slovenia has lots of peninsulas and bays by the Adriatic Sea, and that's why our shore is much longer than it was if you just drew the line from Italian border to Croatian border. Yeah, so it's 42 kilometers in reality, but otherwise it would be much shorter if we wouldn't have such a diverse landscape. And I think that stands for pretty much everything in Slovenia. Everything is small, in my opinion, very cute, but also very, very diverse. And it doesn't actually stand only on the scale of the whole country. So it's not just diversity between the regions of Slovenia. It's also diversity even more locally, you know, on the micro scale, let's say. So the locals that live here, they can tell you that the landscape is quite diverse, but also because of that the microclimate is very different if you compare the eastern and the western part of our coast. So if you went to the western part, which borders to Italy, they get much more rain than the eastern part that borders to Croatia. And that was quite important in the past, because in the eastern part, right at the border to Croatia, we still have big salt pans that were really, really important for the economy of this place in the past, because salt used to be very precious. It was very expensive, so it brought a lot of money, but it was also very, very important in storage of food and also in other parts of the industry. But anyway, why did they produce it there and not in the western part? Well, because the locals, they can tell you that quite often it happens that in the western part of Slovenian coast you often have many heavy rains or storms or just heavy clouds, whereas then in the eastern part you can sometimes even have a lovely sunny weather, and the climate is much milder. So it was really good for producing salt, because then the water could evaporate quite faster than it would if you had salt pans on the other side. So we still have the salt pans there, and they are still producing salt. And the interesting part is that quite a lot of it is actually now produced again in traditional way, which is very ecological, very good for the nature, and it's also just interesting to see it.